Hello, I'm Jennie Rayment, and I've been quilting for a number of years, so long you really don't want to know. Anyway, today I'm going to show you how to make a festive cracker. Now, this cracker could be used for any festivities you like. You could make them for Christmas, you could make them for Easter, you can make them for an anniversary, maybe a special birthday. They are completely reusable. You refill, reuse, and they will continue for quite some time to come. You could even wash them if you wanted to. The crackers themselves are simple to make. They require some fabric, some ribbon, and a product called S80. This is a Vlieseline product that is a stiff interfacing. It's great for any craft product. You can sew it on the machine, you can sew it by hand. And I use it to make the stiffer part of the center section of my cracker. So here is how to make a festive cracker. Sit back and watch how easy it is to sew. To make the cracker, you're going to need 2 pieces of S80, and I use 3 different fabrics. From your S80, you'll need to cut a couple of strips. One strip will be 5 inches deep by 6.5 inches long. The other one is 5 inches deep by 6 inches long. In addition to that, you'll want some fabric. Now I've used a green, a red, and a cream. The cream is going to go in the center, the red will be the top part of the cracker, and the green, the trim. When it comes to sizes, you will have 3 sections that will measure 6 3/4 inches across the width. The length will be 6 inches for this one by 6 3/4, 5 inches for this one by 6 3/4, and 7 3/4 by that one by 6 3/4. And that will make the inside of the cracker. To make the outside of the cracker, we have the same colors, but this time I have 6 inches by 7 1/4, 5 inches by 7 1/4, and 7 1/4 inches by 7 3/4. So all of these are 7 1/4 inches wide. What you will need to do, first of all, is to join the 3 sections together. And I will join them together to make a row using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So join those 3 and join these 3. When you've done the stitching using your 1/4 inch seam allowance, press all the seams towards the green, that direction. Taking the 2 pieces of S80, the larger section is for the wider piece and the narrower section is for the smaller piece, which is the inside of your cracker. Now you want to snuggle the S80 right up to the seam, and you'll notice there's a bit of excess fabric left all the way around it. Once you've snuggled it right up to the seam, pin it in place. Now, because this cracker is going to be reused a lot of times, it's best to stitch this in. Yes, I know you could possibly fuse it in, but believe you me, it's actually best to stitch it in, particularly if you end up having to wash the cracker because somebody's dangled it in the gravy or something, or even spilt wine all over it. Once you've pinned the S80 to the white section of the cracker, you need to sew really closely around the edge, and I suggest you start in this corner, so up here, along here, down the other side, really close to the edge, and when you get to the bottom, turn the excess fabric over the edge of the S80 and stitch along here, preferably with some form of decorative stitch, just to seal the edge and stop this from fraying. Now, on the inside of the cracker, you don't want to add any decorative embellishment, but on the outside of the cracker, we can have a little bit of fun. So let's do the stitching up here, along there, down the other side, and across the bottom. So as you can see, I've stitched up here, along the top, down the other side, really close to the edge of the S80. And then along the bottom, I folded the excess fabric up, and I use the herringbone stitch along here. Now, this is the inside of the cracker, so your choice of threads really doesn't matter. But bear in mind, when you're stitching along the top here, it'll be the bottom bobbin thread that will show. Now, when you've done the inner part of the cracker, you're going to do exactly the same to the outside of the cracker. And this is where you can have fun on your machine with all sorts of decorative threads. and indeed stitches. So pin the S80 in place. You're going to start your stitching again up here, along there, down the bottom. Fold the excess fabric up, and then you can embellish this to your heart's content. You could perhaps use just a very simple herringbone stitch. You could perhaps use a little decorative flower stitch on there and a bit of the herringbone. I do like the herringbone. You maybe like to do something very different. And on this particular one, I've got, again, the herringbone. I obviously must like that one. Flower stitch here, and then a scalloped edge. If ever you're going to do a satin stitch, do remember to put the correct foot on your machine, because you'll want to have the one that has the cutaway section underneath to allow the thick raised decorative stitching to pass cleanly underneath the machine. Stitching on S80 actually is very nice because it's stable and you won't have any need for anything underneath, such as stitch and tear or maybe a piece of paper, because the machine will sew very happily through the S80. So I've pinned in place. I'm going to sew up here, along there, down the other side, turn the excess fabric up, and then add some embellishment. Remember, if you're going to add embellishment and you're working from this side, it's your bottom bobbin thread that will show. But if you turn it over, of course, you can have just the top thread. And have all your stitching going right from one side to the other, so that the thread ends are on the edge here and will get concealed when we sew the cracker together. So I've just gone for speed on mine and done the herringbone pattern and added another line of straight stitch across the bottom here to echo the one I did when I initially sewed the S80 in. Now you could, if you wanted to, do all kinds of embellishment in the middle here. One top tip is don't write the recipient's name across it, because if you go that way, remember the cracker is going to wind like that, so you need to put it this way. But of course, if you put the recipient's name on it, you'll have to give it to them. And maybe you want to use those crackers again another year. Once you've done that stitching, we can do the very complicated bit that comes next. Starting with the inner part, I'm going to fold it directly in half, line up the edges of the S80, because we don't want to sew through that, because that will thicken the seam. Pin it. Now, when you put pins in, I like to put my pins in at right angles to my stitch, because I find it much easier to take the pins out, be you right-handed or left-handed, rather than put them the other way, which tends to buckle the fabric and sometimes get stuck underneath the presser foot. So I will put my pins at right angles. So I'm lining up the edges of the S80, pinning it, and I'm going to sew all the way down the full length of the cracker, pushing my seams towards the longer section, the green at the bottom. Now, it's a very good idea to start in a little bit, reverse to the edge, and then continue the stitching. Reason for that is your thread endings will be within the seam, inside the seam, rather than on the edge, and you won't have to tie them off. I've got a stray thread there, so let's cut that one off. Now, you're going to sew down here using edge of the S80 and then much the same seam allowance, 1/4 of an inch or so, all the way down the red section, onto the green section. And then as you come down the green section, start to, from about 1 inch down, come in a bit, because this will tuck inside the cracker. Now, some of you might wish to overlock this bottom raw edge before you do it. I must confess I've never bothered. It's well tucked inside the cracker, but you could if you wanted to. Do the overlocking or the neatening of this edge before you actually do the stitching, because it's very hard to do it afterwards. But the reason for coming in a bit is this is going to be inside the cracker, and like any bag lining, you always want to have the lining a little bit smaller than the outside, then it fits neatly. So you're now going to sew, start in a bit to the top, all the way down, and drift in by about 1/2 inch, 1 centimetre on the bottom there. I've done exactly the same to the other section of the cracker, the outside section. Started in a bit, sewed all the way down the side of the S80, onto the red section, and drifted my seam in. You could, as I said before, have overlocked that edge or neatened it. Now begins the one slightly tough thing about this cracker, and that is the turning through. You'll find the smaller one a little more difficult to turn through than the bigger one, because the circumference of the circle is not quite the same. It is, in fact, a better idea to turn the cracker through starting at the stiffer end, And the reason for that is the other end, of course, you have made narrower because the seam has drifted in. Now, if you find it difficult to turn it through, then something like a large knitting needle, and I suggest you use the blunt end rather than the sharp end, or some form of pokey tool to help poke it through. It's absolutely fine once you've got into the red section and you come through the stiffened piece. The trick is, as you ease the red part out, ease it out sufficiently so it's about 1 centimeter, half an inch of the green shows, because this makes the nice trim at the top of the cracker. So ease it out. If you do it the other way, A, it's a bit smaller, the aperture, because of the seam drifting in, and B, it's very hard to get the green tucked neatly inside. So I have turned through the inner part. I'm now going to turn through the outer part. And we're getting there. Now, this particular cracker can be reused as many times as you like. And you can put all sorts of things in it, which absolutely make whatever festivities you're going to have. I'm wrestling with this slightly. As with all these things, as soon as you come to do it in front of a camera, nothing goes quite as easily as it does in the studio when you're working totally and utterly by yourself. I might even use the end of my knitting needle just to give it a gentle prod to help. Actually, we're nearly there now. Come on, little one. Out you come. That's it. That's about right. Good. Got to the red bit. Once you get the red section, it is plain sailing. Leave it through. And then ease the red out and keep easing until you've got about half an inch of the green showing. And it's at that stage where I suggest you give it a good press, just to press a nice neat edge round the top of the green trim, all the way around there. You can iron this, but I'd be a bit careful because you don't want a crease. I did, in fact, insert a round object, like a length of wood, or maybe a small bottle or a couple of cotton reels, if I wanted to give it a press and keep it round. So we've now got the 2 sections of our cracker. What I like to do with the cracker is to put a small amount of embellishment just round the green rim here to add that little bit of je ne sais quoi to it. This could be done with a decorative thread or a matching thread. But we're going to work round the top here using the inside, so stitching from the inside. So it'll be your bottom bobbin that shows. So if you wish, we can add a decorative stitch right the way around the top rim of the cracker. So as you can see, I've got it underneath the presser foot and I'm working on the inside of the cracker. Suggest you start near the junction of the seams. Drop your presser needle down to start the stitch and proceed in orderly fashion. I'm using that same Harrigan stitch to go all the way around. And apologies if you can hear the sewing machine and something falling minorly off. And just keep going round. You just keep turning it with your finger, just gently moving it all the way around the top of the cracker with a decorative. Now, when you come to the end, rather than having to try and tie the twist, which I hate, what I tend to do is to reduce my stitch length to very small and do a few stitches on the spot. You can just tie it. So if you take your stitch length back to being really small, as low as you can go, some of you will be able to go to 0, some of you to 0.5, and literally just do 2 stitches in the spot, that will tie the threads off. When you've done it to one of them, then you can do it to the top of the neck of the other cracker. So having finished the 2 halves of my cracker, it's now time to put the entire thing together. If you want to thread a snap to it, and you can buy these online, tuck it in through the end of the section and feed it into the second section so you've got the snap running through the entire thing. Now, the best thing to do is to tuck the snap in first, fill the cracker up there, and then, sorry, I put it the wrong way around, haven't I, silly me? I'm going to put the snap in the smaller section, fill the smaller section, and then slot the two together and just bring the snap through and out the other end. You can probably feel it if you dive down into the cracker. Once you've got the whole thing filled up and stuffed, all you need then is a little bit of ribbon just to tie around there. Now, when it comes to tying a bow, I tend to tie a bow with, just make that a little bit neater and tidier, with the ribbon, with the cracker going the same way. So I'm going to tie it around here. Then my bows look mirror images of each other, because I obviously tie one-handed one way and the same-handed the other way. So pop your ribbon around there, tie a nice neat little bow, turn it round and do the same thing on the other end. And that really is all there is to making a festive cracker, with a little bit of fabric, a little bit of time, a little bit of ribbon, thread that matches your fabric if you wish, and you can have a play and you can make lots and lots and lots. And before I finish, one last little thing that's a useful top tip is just where the seam is inside here, just catch it down by hand. Felt sometimes it will catch as you push the two parts of the cracker together. So a couple of hand stitches on both bits just to hold those seams down. And then when you've done, all you have to do is pull the cracker and see if anything is in it. Sadly, the snap sound does not come out on this computer because I have tried it. But when you pull the cracker, pull it, snap, and see if there's anything inside it. Oh, there is. What have I got? Let's have a look. Oh, someone's given me a pair of earrings. Isn't that lovely? Now, before you use the cracker again, don't forget to take the snap out one end, and there's the other end. Put it back together again, and it's all ready for use next time you want it. So I hope you've enjoyed making a festive cracker suitable for any occasion. And thank you for watching.